We will start the second session. Please be seated. First of all, on behalf of the panel, I welcome individuals and deputations for attending the public hearing. Would you please put on your headphones and, if necessary, select your channel. 0 is floor, 1 is Cantonese, and 2 is English. Representatives, individuals, your written submission to the panel and what you say here is not protected by the Legislative Council Powers and Privileges Ordinance. I will ask you to speak in turn. You will have 3 minutes. When the bell rings, you'll be stopped. We have limited time. If you can't finish what you want to say, you may put them in a written submission. Let's start. The first one, I would like to ask Mr. Dang Kam-ming to speak. Good morning, everyone. The Education Bureau doesn't want to reduce the number of students in a class. One of the reasons is that parents would like their children to go into a school they prefer. I am disappointed because that reason is further strengthening misunderstanding of parents, and also strengthening the mercantilism, consumerism of parents. As you know that there are 3 bands based on the students' performance in primary schools. Lower bands will have brighter students, and for other bands, they have students that perform more poorly. The resources allocated to different schools actually doesn't differ much. Teachers will teach as they are bound to. And if you leave the survival or otherwise of a school on the hands of parents, then it is not fair. Of course, the parents should have a say. But what I'm disappointed is that nowadays, education officials don't even have an understanding of the basic principles. They think that by instilling the idea into parents' head that not popular schools are poor schools, that itself is wrong. And I'd like to say that with a drop in student population, then the number of students in Band 1 schools will drop too. And as a general rule, the chance of getting into a school you want will not be affected because the general population has decreased. Weaker schools should be given more resources. But I personally think that the 26 students school for criterion is not a satisfactory one. You say parents don't accept poor quality schools and they turn to other ones. So it's 26 people for 2 classes. Well, we should give more resources to smaller schools, weaker schools, so that students there will be given more suitable education. And I think this is an effective allocation of resources instead of stigmatization. Secretary for Education. Don't be offended. You used to be in human resources. You didn't come from the education sector. Never mind, a lot of principals would like to work hand in hand with the Bureau. We will give comments and we will work together.
Mr. WA Kwai-lun be the next to speak. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen from the education sector. Now, we have school principals and many colleagues from the education sector attending today's meeting. Well, I think we would like to tell everybody what we think about the current situation, and we want to share with you our analysis. A lot of colleagues have already spoken their mind. I think we have already put forward our case very strongly. Today, I just want to comment on the Education Bureau's objectives to keep the schools and to keep the teaching posts. I hope that this is a genuine objective. Don't cheat us. Well, I had the painful experience of having to close a school. Well, to be frank, I don't want to be the leader of a school that has to be closed, and I don't want to become an expert in suspending a school or closing a school. Well, many of our colleagues share this point, and we all agree that this is an unhappy experience. And some students have also undergone such an unhappy experience. Well, closing down schools will save resources. You don't have to pay principals, you don't have to pay teachers. Teachers lose their jobs, and then their teaching experience will be wasted. Do we really want to see such resources being wasted? Students don't have a happy childhood. Even when a person would like to go back to his former school so as to cherish his former memories, he can't do so. So can we put a dollar sign to the loss of such good memories while doing harm to the children as well as the teachers? When we talk about wastage, yes, we need millions of dollars. And the Education Bureau can have procedures to make sure that there won't be wrongful transfer of assets. But what about keeping the schools? Yes, of course, the Bureau has to fund the bill, and we have to pay all sorts of expenditure. But then, by reducing the number of students allocated to each class, I think it's a better answer. Now, we have got many lawmakers present to listen to us, and you have been very accommodating. You even give up your time to speak so that the school principals have more time to address the issue. We are very united. We've got over 100 minutes to speak. The next, Ms. Wong. Mr. Chairman, legislators, colleagues, good morning. Yesterday, I attended a lunch, and then I told them that I would be attending this morning's meeting. And then they asked me why I would be coming. And then they stared at me. They asked me what's happening. School principals used to adopt a low profile, and yet today you're going to talk to the administration. And they wondered whether the council could not sort of come to an agreement. Yes, school principals used to adopt a low profile, but today we have to come out to speak. Well, for the past few years, everybody had a hard time, students and teachers alike. There was much more to do under the new academic structure. Remedial classes, additional classes, even for Saturday mornings. We don't have sufficient class time, and then the syllabus is wide. We have got school-based assessment, we have got project learning, and it means that teachers have to take up a lot of workload outside the school hours. And then for the education reform, it means that we need to have more interaction and more activities. It is student-based. We're willing to tie in with the changes. We are facilitators, and we believe that this is desirable. We want our generation to come to have a better future. I think if we can cut the class size, and if we can reduce the class hours for teachers, there will be a better guarantee for quality. Now, the society is getting more and more complex, and students are presenting all sorts of problems, family problems, friendship, emotional difficulties. Teachers need to counsel them. Teachers work for the welfare and well-being of the future society, and our students will become the masters of the future society. We need to give a stable environment to the teachers so that they don't have to worry for other things and just focus on teaching their students. We take care of students of different abilities. Different schools adopt different strategies, but we have one common goal. We want to nurture the future generation for the sake of our society. Now, it is said that the Bureau has sincerity, but then they're using the wrong measures. It is very painful to see that you don't listen to us. A few years ago, Mr. Michael Shin, the secretary, told us that he would talk to us, and we also felt that it's partnership. Even when we try to ring up the district officers, there was dialogue. But today it is very different. It is painful. Today you have a double-page advertisement. What is it for? Why don't you sit down and have a word with us? I'm a deputy school principal. I'm also a teacher at the front line. Every day I have to teach in the classroom. Well, what I want to say is that for schools mainly adopting Band 3 students, please don't call them vulnerable schools or weak schools. We are not weak. The teachers are not weak. We are very efficient and effective. Every day we try to think of new teaching methods to motivate the students and enhance the effectiveness of our teaching. We try to accommodate the students, and outside the formal curriculum, we try to have more sports activities and artistic experiences for them. We want to allow them to have a whole person development. We try to enroll students from non-mainstream schools. We take good care of them, and some of them have made good achievements. And we have also helped in implementing the new academic structure. Not all of them would proceed to universities, but we do try to help them in planning for their lifetime goals. So we're not weak, we're very efficient. Now we want to have senior secondary school education for everybody. We used to be a very good partner of the Bureau. We are at the front line. Teachers want to have a stable teaching force. We want to have stability in the teaching environment, and then we can make use of our experience and we can pass it on to our younger fellows. If we haven't got a stable environment, it means that we can't do this at all. And in fact, the administration's measures can't deal with the problems. This is particularly so for the possibility of students going to the wrong band. I think we need to have a dialogue. We need to sit down with the Bureau to have a discussion. Just now we're able to take a photograph together. Last time I was here for 2 nights, just a month or so ago. Probably for the next time when we take a photograph, probably we are talking about 200 school principals, but 2,000, 20,000 with students and parents joining us. With sincerity, I extend my invitation to the Bureau to sit down with us and try to cope with the difficulties together. Thank you. Next, Mr. Kwok. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to talk about the opportunities presented by the new senior secondary education. We've just completed the DSE for the first time. The biggest difference between DSE and the A-level is that you have got 4 core subjects: English, Chinese, mathematics, and liberal studies. For the language subjects as well as liberal studies, the requirements are even more demanding, and you need to be communicative, you need critical thinking, you need generic knowledge. For my school, at the junior level, we divided the classes into a number of groups. But then you said that we were able to cope with it. That's in paragraph 25 on page 8 of the Chinese version of your paper. In fact, we have been getting help from our school sponsoring body. We have been doing so, but you think that we can cope within the resources that you have given us. We would like to help students of different abilities. We want to have better DSE results. But we also want to allow teachers to be united as a teaching force. Many frontline teachers feel that it is very hard, but we want to provide good environment so that the teachers can realize their potential to their best. In fact, nowadays, some teachers are engaged in non-educational work. They have to engage in publicity work. There will be a cut of student population by 11,000. But then this is an opportunity. If you make good use of the opportunity and adopt our 3-2-1 proposal, then it means that teachers will have a better environment in the next few years, and they don't need to worry. They can focus on their teaching work, and they can focus on the students. For the NSS, we have 5 classes, and yet we divide the students into 6 groups. In this way, we can have better results in the elective subjects, and then the teachers can teach better. For the NSS, we are dealing with the full strength of the 6th form instead of a smaller number of students when we use of the A level. I hope that you can allow us to be dedicated to our staff, and please make sure that teachers can do their best to teach their students. This is what teachers want. So when you review the NSS, please also make good use of the opportunity of the drop of student population. Provide better environment to us so that we can enhance the quality. Thank you. Next, Ms. Wong. Mr. Chairman, colleagues, legislators, good morning. We started to have the market mechanism when it comes to the secondary school place allocation system. Now, different schools have got different missions. We serve different students so that students will get proper care and attention. The so-called market mechanism means that some schools who are able to do this have been phased out, and some students didn't get the support they needed, and so parents had fewer choices. Now, if things stay put, it means that more schools will be eliminated in the prevailing circumstances. The Bureau has been saying that we need to respect the parental choice, but if we start to have fewer schools of different nature, then does it really mean that we are giving choices to the parents? I hope that we can reduce the number of students allocated to each class, and then we can keep the schools, and then we can keep the environment and the support needed by the students. Now, for this market mechanism, it means that teachers didn't do their core work. They had to do a lot of packaging, and they had a very busy time. Teaching and learning should not be confined to classroom activities. We need to provide a lot of after-class activities so as to bring out the potential of the students. So, extracurricular activities are important. Many teachers are willing to spend time after class to talk to students, to understand them better and help them to resolve the problems. If in the coming year, if we have got a drastic drop in student population, and if teachers are asked to do a lot of other things to keep their schools, it means that teachers have to attend to non-core work. Who is going to suffer? On the face of it, teachers, because they have more on their plate, but ultimately it would be students who would suffer most, because teachers have to do non-core work to keep the schools, and they can't focus on their teaching task. It means that they don't have spare time to talk to the students and to grow together. Yes, we need mitigatory measures so that teachers can focus on the teaching task. Once again, I urge the administration to reduce the number of students allocated to each class. Then we can keep the schools, and then we can maintain the quality of our education. Next, Mr. Chong. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. it has never occurred to me that I'm in my 50s, I still have to come out to speak. Well, to be frank, for the experience shared by other school principals, I didn't have that sort of experience. I didn't feel well when I heard about their painful experience. I want to tell everybody that for English medium schools or schools getting Band 1 students only and EMI as well, we also had a hard time recently. Well, different EMI schools have told us that teachers have had a lot of difficult times for the past decade. They had emotional disorders, they are depressed, and some of them have even got cancer. Now, they are having the best students. Aren't they supposed to be on the automatic gear? But I don't think so. The society has changed. When we were young, yes, it was something which was supposed to be automatic. But today, students need a lot of support, not just academically, but also emotional support. You can't just imagine how hard it is. And we, as an EMI school, has this experience to share with you. And then all schools have had the experience of a decade's education reform. Whether you are in the 30s, 40s, or 50s, we are talking about a change in the teaching methodology. Not just Band 3 schools have to change, Band 1 schools also have to change. And the pain and suffering are just unimaginable. I just want to say that this government should do justice to us. Just now, the secretary said that the ratio is 1 to 15. Sorry, very sorry, it is not like that in our school. It's 1 to 20 in my school. Please come to our school to do a head count so as to prove that your so-called 15.9, 15.8 isn't really a universal figure. It is just an average figure. What we are faced with is one teacher taking care of 20 students. And secondly, I want to mention that some parents have called us and asked me whether with the drop in the number of students allocated, they had a smaller chance of getting into our school. Well, there is a fall in the student population across the board. Even if we adopt the 3-to-1 proposal, they have the same chance of getting admitted to our school. So please be more human-oriented.
Next, Mr. Zhang Kai-man. Chairman, members, government officials, good morning. We have over 200 school principals from different schools in different districts of different bandings coming here, including EMI schools, CMI schools, schools not subject to the risk of closure. We have united ourselves to come here because we want to improve the quality of education. We also hope that the Education Bureau would fulfill this promise. We recall that the former secretary, Mr. Michael Shun, summoned us to have a meeting with the Education Bureau. He persuaded us to take part in the voluntary optimization of class structure scheme. The school sponsoring bodies were willing to tide over difficult times together. We anticipated that with reduction in classes, problems could only be alleviated, and new proposals have to be implemented by 2013-14. And the Education Bureau should fulfill its promise and in the coming few years implement the upward-downward adjustment mechanism, and in a progressive and orderly manner gradually reduce the number of students per class, be it 3-2-1 proposal, 2-2-1 or 2-1-1-1 proposals. We should put our heads together and discuss these options. And should there be a rebound in student population, the number of students per class can gradually increase. And should there be a surge in student population with mainland students coming to Hong Kong, the number of classes can be increased as well. Over the past decade, as mentioned by other school principals, we have undergone education reform, and we had to take care of the differences in students and students with special needs. Our teachers had made an all-out effort. We hope that through the new senior secondary academic structure, we will be given time to adjust to the new system and to be given more time to care for our students. If the education sector is subject to more plight because of the decline in student population and the closure of schools, etc., we wouldn't be able to survive. We hope that the Education Bureau could take note of these matters. Next, Ms. Ho. Chairman, members, educators, good morning. Many school principals who have spoken have already expressed the wish of our sector. I just want to supplement a few points. First, about the mismatch problem. The Education Bureau has often emphasized that the reduction in number of students allocated to each S1 class would take away the opportunity for students to enter schools of their choice. Now, according to statistics, some 4,000 students would enter Band 1 EMI schools, and altogether there are 100 classes. Without reduction in the number of students per class, the places will be filled by students who are performing less well, and it means that the administration would facilitate the widening of the disparity between students' performance. Are the Band 1 schools really suitable for these students? And under the refined MOI policy, another review would not be conducted until 2016, and these schools will continue to be EMI schools. And will these students be able to adjust to the EMI setting? These students will also affect the second cycle of the EMI schools. In other words, for these EMI schools, they may have to change to other mediums of instruction or to have CMI classes. In fact, the teachers' workload have been increased because the materials have to be prepared in both languages, and I see that my teachers are all very hardworking. They're very responsible, but they worked till late at night. I have a new recruit this year, and this teacher has worked for just a month or so before resigning because the teacher couldn't withstand the workload, and this will continue to haunt Band 1 schools. The other point is that for Band 3 schools, or as the Education Bureau calls them, disadvantaged schools, I understand that many teachers there are also very passionate about their work. Next deputation. Good morning. Now, about declining in secondary student population. It is the administration, not us, who is in the best position to understand demographic changes. So it is the administration's responsibility to plan ahead in order to cope with the demographic changes. Well, a few years ago, during a gathering between school principals, I asked this question. how many schools would have 5 or 6 groups in per 4 classes? Half of the teachers, half of the school principals raised their hands. Now, in terms of student-teacher ratio, different schools use their own resources to implement subject grouping. And even in junior secondary classes, subject grouping exists in many schools. The Education Bureau should investigate and find out where the resources come from. Many teachers are willing to take up extra workload in order to cater for the needs of students. So, Secretary, you're also very concerned, like we do, about the performance of the students in the first ESE, and we all understand that the performance has not been good. So, with declining student population, we hope that you could grasp this opportunity and reduce the number of students per class, so that we can restore the old ratio, that is 30 students per class in the old system. Education is a long-term investment. It is very important to long-term social development. If we can take care of different needs of students and that the teaching force can be stabilized so that teachers can be reassured and work together with parents and schools. I also hope that Mr. Ng can listen to our aspirations and respond to our requests. Next deputation, Mr. Lam. Chairman, members, fellow educators, good morning. As pointed out by many deputations, at present, the student population has declined by 11,000, and we anticipate that many schools will face the risk of closure, and many professional teachers, as a result, would lose their teaching posts. And the Secretary has said in the beginning that as far as the early retirement scheme is concerned, only teachers with 10 or more years of experience are eligible for this scheme. Well, they, as experienced teachers, should be in the best position to teach, and yet the Education Bureau is encouraging them to leave their post. And in fact, we should attach importance to the middle-rank teachers. However, the Bureau is going contrary to this principle by encouraging them to take part in the early retirement scheme. Now, just now, another school principal has talked about English as the medium of instruction. I won't repeat that point about the mismatch of banding. I believe that the Education Bureau is very clear about this problem. However, they said that parents should be given the right to choose the schools of their choice. But in fact, their children cannot be provided with the quality education service that best suit their needs. I hope the Education Bureau can carefully consider this view. Now, the Hong Kong Subsidized Secondary Schools Council proposed, as we see, that starting from 2013-14, the student population will continue to decrease. So our proposal is to reduce 3 students per class in the first year, and 2 students in the second year, and 1 in the third year. That is, for the allocation of places, it will go down from 34 to 31, 29, and 28, and together with 2 repeated places. Altogether, there will be 30 students per class, so it will be the same as the class size under the AL system. this is not a greedy request. We're not asking for across-the-board approach. We just want more flexibility. I hope the administration will consider that. Next, Mr. Chen. Well, thank you, Chairman, members. Well, I'd like to explain as well. Some said that, well, you are so low-key, why are you attending this meeting? But I said that I have to attend this meeting. The last time I attended this meeting, I was happy because we worked with the Bureau. But today, the Bureau had advertised in the newspaper. We had a similar declaration, but we did not have sufficient resources to make it as big. We wanted to save schools, save teaching posts as well. But what we're talking about is stabilization of the teaching force and the provision of quality education. We're not talking about the new or old term of government, but the Bureau saw the need for flexibility, so they suggest that we take one step first before we take the second step. Well, just now I read the Education Bureau's advertisement, but in fact it's misleading. We're not insisting the 3-to-1 proposal. All along we have not been given this opportunity to discuss in detail this proposal with the Education Bureau. The fact is we have been trying to discuss this issue with the Education Bureau, but the door is left ajar. It will soon close tight. And our flexible proposal is that it will become a non-recurrent expenditure. After 3 years, it will resume. We understand that the subsidy per capita in those 3 years will be high, and that's why we're not suggesting small class teaching. We're suggesting that a flexible approach be adopted. The other point is that ever since I graduated from university, in fact, well, retirement is just 2 years away. In fact, there is no need for me to attend this meeting. But we saw that for the former government, the number of students would be decreased gradually. So why isn't this approach adhered to? Why wouldn't the government do anything until we ask them to? Because we're seeing a decline in the students' performance. And lastly, I'd like to invite you to close your eyes and think about one thing. The government says that only 5 schools will disappear next year, but we believe that the number of schools will be more than that because there are more schools waiting to be killed. They're waiting to die, and it's even worse than waiting to die is worse than dying. Next deputation. Well, about the 5 schools mentioned, according to the paper, the Bureau only cited the example in 2008 and 2009 and said that only 34 classes were reduced because of the decrease in 5,000 students number. So I want to point out that with a decrease of 5,000 students or so, the base number is higher. In fact, the actual number of schools or classes to be cut would be greater because many schools can barely survive at the moment. So if you adopt the same formula, we won't achieve the same effect as in 2008-09. Members should take note of this fact. Next point. We're just talking about what happens next year. I can't say in the next 2 or 3 years how many schools will be closed down, how many schools will experience layoffs, etc. This is also the school principal's concern. We're now grooming students to enter universities. In the past, we had elite advanced level classes, and there were 30 students per class. But now it's being illogical. I hope that members could also understand this point about the class size. Now, also, the Bureau says that schools with one class or two classes can still operate, but these can barely be called schools. If your parents, would you prefer your children to study in these schools? Will they become prefects? Will there be any extracurricular activities? Has the Education Bureau ever thought about that? Will we be able to provide whole person development for our students? It's not about the employment of teachers. It's not about a political issue or controversy. It's not about saving teaching posts in schools. This is an issue of education. We need to have a stable environment, not only for teachers, but for students as well. We want a normal school environment for students. We don't want a quiet schools with only classes for students but no extracurricular activities. If we want our students to have a better development, then this pressure should be alleviated. Next deputation. Chairman, members, fellow educators, good morning. Before I came, I asked my colleagues whether I should come. They asked whether I was acting on behalf of the school or was it because of justice. And I said justice, and that's why I put aside my work and came. I'd like to speak on 3 points. First, our school provides matriculation classes, and we have professional teachers, and we have successful examples of grooming exemplary students. However, in recent years, we need to adjust ourselves to the new academic structure, and this is very different from advanced level classes, because students in AL classes are those who have successfully been promoted from the third level education. Whereas for the new academic structure, it's more general education. It's more akin to general education. So there are many underlying problems. I think that we're all aware of them. Under such circumstances, teachers should be given sufficient time to teach the students not only about what's said on the textbook, but about other things as well. They need to genuinely care for their students. This is just the first cohort of under the NAS, and in order for it to succeed, there should be proper student-class ratio and teacher-student ratio. Now, second point, it's very easy to kill a school, but it's not easy to nurture professional teachers. If we want to groom professional teachers, we need to have time. Over the past few years, I've seen many examples. There are passionate young teachers who'd like to join the profession. They had the passion, but they couldn't become teachers. They had to take up TA posts or temporary teaching posts. They had the ideology and passion, but unfortunately, we weren't able to provide permanent posts for them.
Next, Miss Yang Mei-hei. Good morning. The Bureau said that they want to preserve teaching posts and also the quality, but they have already asked for a 700 in number early retirement scheme, and they failed to tackle the mismatch. And I would like to give you a picture in detail about what will happen if there is a mismatch. Mrs. Dare, on the day before, said to a dozen of our principals that, well, for Band 2 students, if they are in a Band 1 school mixing with Band 1 students, then they will improve. But as a result, and the reality is that they will be frustrated because they can't catch up. They always feel lag behind, and their thirst for knowledge will be dampened. And as a result, they will loiter elsewhere, anywhere but school. And if we give them extra tuition on various subjects, well, even for a bright student, it means tremendous pressure. We have a lot of students in our extra classes anyway. So even if these Band 2 students would like to join, it will be difficult for us. And these students have manifested signs physically and psychologically. They have phobia. They don't want to come into class. And there's also they are also hypochondriacs. They fall ill whenever there are tests and exams. And they only get promoted once every 2 years. So parents will have to face the reality and change schools for their children. And that is tragic because they've been hurt. And you can't just wipe that. So if you do not resolve the differences in student abilities, then you will not be able to preserve quality. And because of the mismatch, we receive SEN students in Band 1. In junior high, teachers can still help them. But when it comes to senior classes, for autistic students or ADHD students, what do you think teachers are supposed to do? What about bright students? In junior schools, they will not say anything, but in senior schools, they kept asking teachers when there will be groupings because the performance as a whole has been dragged down. So do you want these students to repeat or to be promoted? These are problems that we have to resolve. If they are not tackled, how can we keep our quality of education? That's all I want to say. Thank you. Next. Mr. Gokman Leung. Good morning. You know, there is a continuous decrease in student population for secondary schools. We are plagued with problems. So we want to stabilize the environment and the environment for the teaching team. In 2011, there was a drop of 6,000, and altogether 200 schools participated in the voluntary optimization of class structure schemes, and they reduced class numbers from 5 to 4. The problem was resolved. We are aware that next year, 2013, there will be another great drop of 5,100 secondary students. Recently, the Bureau proposed 25 students for opening a class, so 26 will give 2 classes, and also relaxing the criteria for approving S1 classes. The Bureau said that about 5 schools will be closed. But I have 3 questions. Even if the estimate of the Bureau is correct, that is 5 schools, they will be closed in 2013-14. What about the years afterwards with a dropping student population? How many more schools will be forced to close? Schools estimate that quite a number of schools who have participated in the optimization scheme will have to further reduce the number of classes to 3 or even 2. Given such uncertainty in the teaching environment, they can only work under the fear that they may lose their job any time. With the shrinking of number of classes, existing teachers will be afraid because of the uncertainty. And what about teachers to be, those being trained in schools to be teachers? There is no career certainty for teachers. Can we keep the succession of our teaching team? Today, 200 plus principals as early as 8 o'clock, just like when they go to school, are here in electrical. There are altogether 400 plus principals in Hong Kong. That means over 50% of the secondary school principals are here to speak their mind. I'm really moved because it has never happened in the past few decades. So I hope the Bureau will value the brains of the 200 plus principals to carefully consider our proposals. We urge the Bureau to consider and take on board the proposals floated, that is, to make adjustments in accordance with the student population. Next, Mr. Wang Wei-dong. This is an important date, and I had mixed feelings yesterday, and I think as secretaries reckon that we will come out. And they may wonder how many, 100, 150, but in fact, over 200 principals came out. We've just had the review of the NSS, and it's a very busy time for principals. However, half of the principals in Hong Kong have come out. We're not here to try to keep our jobs. We will not suffer docking in our pay with the class reduced. And just before school closures, a lot of the principals would have retired already. A lot of the principals, including my school, will not be closed. But we're very concerned about the future of our students. Parents think that without reducing the number of class, then their children will go into the school, a school they like. But without reducing the number of students in a class, it will result in a mismatch. Some students will experience a few tough years of secondary schools, and in the end, it's students who suffer. The quality of education may suffer because schools have spent their efforts in trying to attract students. Teachers will live in fear because they may lose their job any time, and they will not be able to take good care of students. So I don't really understand why the administration will spend $200 million to build an artificial beach that is not needed, and this beach will severely damage the ecology over there. Why will they refuse to reduce the number of students in each class to maintain quality of education and to avoid the damage to the education ecology? We have 200 plus headmasters coming out when they're so busy to speak for the future of the hundreds of thousands of students and also thousands of teachers. We want the Bureau to seize the opportunity of the drop in population to optimize the quality of education. The principals came out to read the statement. I hope the Bureau will not underestimate the determination of the sector. If they repeat past mistakes and if they neglect our calling, then they are making a serious mistake. We hope that the Bureau and principals will work together to achieve breakthrough. So, legislators, please state your mind. Next, Mr. Lam Ji-gong. Good morning, everyone. Schools exist to provide a good environment for students to grow and learn. They will learn from success in the school, and then they will then make contribution to society. If we are to do all that, we need stability, reinforcement, and enhancement. The CY Leung said we have to seek changes while preserving stability. And I think there is a severe instability in the education sector. We have to change to be better. The NSS is there to make things better. We have to take better care of students. With the fine-tuning of the medium of instruction, it aims at improving our students' language abilities. There are problems of students with finding school places and also finding university places. There are changes for their benefit. We need stability to achieve success. I'm happy to see that the Bureau over the past few years have implemented administrative measures to reduce the number of students and number of classes to stabilize the situation. We have seen a preliminary success. We realized substantial resources and funding has been involved. They have already devoted a large amount of resources to achieve initial stability. But then how come all of a sudden they introduce a policy that will trigger instability? Can they stabilize the situation given a continuous drop in student population without lowering the class number and the students in each class? With the mismatch, as I've said very clearly, weak schools will be labeled weak schools, and these schools will in the end disappear. It is estimated 100 schools will have their classes reduced. Problems result is to have teachers removed. Surplus teachers will wait in line to be fired. Then how do you decide what the priority is? How they position themselves in the queue? Next, Ms. Wai Yi-kwan. With a drop in student population, it is a good opportunity to improve our quality. If you don't seize the opportunity, then the sector will be damaged. We are very concerned that the mismatch will widen differences in students' ability, and as a result, students will suffer and education quality will suffer as well. We fail to take into account the needs of students, and it is not the education sector that suffers, it's the whole community and society. The Education Bureau said they need to preserve a number of things, but what is more important is to preserve our future and also our competitiveness. If we lose in our competitiveness, how much more resources would you have to put into to rescue the situation? It may never happen. And I have two questions for the Secretary. You said preserving the capability. Under the old system, we train our students to get up to sit for examination to get a place in university. There are 30 people in a class. But now you're asking us to have 36 students in a class. How can we preserve capability? And if that works, is it the case that in the past the Bureau has raised the resources, or it is simply a wrong decision now? If there are economic difficulties, and we are willing to increase the number of students when the population increases. About a decade ago, the then CE said that we have to surpass UK and US. But at the moment, you compare the student-teacher proportion with the figure in other Asian countries. Are we retrogressing? And what is the situation in the US and the UK? Thank you. Next, Mr. Choi Lun-on. Good morning, everyone. The Committee on Homeschool Cooperation has convened a special meeting on the issue, and we have reached a number of consensus. First, we understand that there will be a decrease in student population in the coming few years. So we need measures to stabilize the sector and to maintain education quality without affecting the teaching team and dampening the morale of teachers. Schools should not face closure because they have an under-enrollment. And there should not be anything that will change the structure of the education sector. And we have to make optimum use of resources. There should be targeted measures to help weak schools or underprivileged schools. In particular, schools who have a large intake of Band 3 students and SEN students, and also those with enrollment problems. Quality schools that are weak and schools that have passion to teach should be preserved, but that should be an objective criteria and also quality standard to maintain quality. And that should be strengthened education to parents to teach them not to just blindly pursue famous schools. And that should be a diversified education system. Parents should choose schools in accordance with the ability and preference of students, so that they can play their potential to the full. If there is an across-the-board reduction of number of students, and you mislead parents to think that otherwise the chance of their children getting into a good school will be affected, is wrong. We ask for a fine-tuning based on the interests of students. 4. We should seize the opportunity of the drop in student population to enhance quality of teachers. Say, for example, 3-month paid leave for professional development, and also the early retirement scheme for teachers. But can be fine-tuned to allow teachers to come back to the sector. And from the perspective of students, any changes should not affect education quality. And communication between schools and parents should be strengthened. Next, Ms. Chen Gizheng. Hello, I am a secondary school principal from Yaoqing. My fellow principals would like the Bureau to seize the opportunity to enhance the quality of our secondary schools and to decrease the number of students in a class. Similar views have been expressed, and I'm not going to repeat. And I would like to talk about the reduction of students in each class. The Bureau said that they are people-based and student-based. Teaching affects lives. Reduction of students in each class can release make more room for teachers to teach students about life. Given the current societal situation, students need guidance from teachers. And if the number of places is higher than the number of students, then you are turning the education sector into a commercialized one. Schools are worried because they have to prove themselves with a performance. So education has been commercialized, so are students, and the role of principals will change too. Principals are supposed to be leaders to promote education, but instead their role has been changed into a manager to expand their business. This has departed from the core value of education. I have personal experience in this regard. With the commercialization of schools, where we see that the soul of our teachers have been tainted. With a drop in S1 population, well, the situation is only going to get worse. Our student said to me, "Teachers, please treat me as a person, not just a figure, a number on your record." And I believe that education is people-based. And I think currently the number of students in secondary schools should be reduced. I expect the CE to return education to education. Thank you.
Next, Ms. Kay. Mr. Chairman, lawmakers, and also fellow principals, the Civic Party has always been asking for a better learning environment so the students can have a diversified environment so that they can become the talents of the future society. So the Civic Party has been asking for a better environment, a smaller class size. We see a drop in the student population, and this is the best time to introduce small class teaching. In year 2013-14, the S1 student population will be reduced by more than 5,000. In the coming years, the number of students will be kept at an equally low level. It means that some schools with underemployment will be faced with the possibility of being closed. I don't think the Education Bureau should adopt a passive attitude. We should make use of this opportunity to introduce small class teaching in secondary education. The Civic Party thinks that by having small class teaching, we can reduce the workload of teachers. We can also provide more care and attention to individual students. Under the NSS, in terms of learning and assessment, we see a greater degree of diversity. And given the current mode of teaching, teachers don't actually have sufficient time to introduce an interactive and diversified mode of teaching and learning. And students don't have time to take part in different kinds of activities. The Civic Party thinks that by having small class teaching, we can answer the needs of the education today. And then we've also got students with special educational needs. They need more attention when they are in the mainstream schools. So by having SCT, teachers with more time for students with SEN, and then we can also take care of the different achievements of different students. So I think the SCT would tie in with the needs of the education reform. Of course, the administration can also learn from the experience of primary schools, where we have already got small class teaching. I think the experience of primary schools will be of reference value for secondary schools. Lastly, the CE has said in his election platform that education planning should be carried out in the light of changes in the population. So the Education Bureau must review the policy and come up with the right programs. Next, Mr. Jonathan Lai. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the legislature, fellow colleagues. I would like to say something about the heavy workload of teachers. Now, for lawmakers who are present here, I think you had the experience of sitting together with 30 students in an advanced level class in the 70s or 60s. On what basis, for what educational philosophy have we changed the class size from 30 to 36? If you look at the percentage, it is an increase of 20%. In other words, teachers are having a higher level of pressure. Each student gets less attention. Just now, Mr. the Secretary, talked about the teacher-student ratio. And in fact, it's 24 for senior secondary school in Japan. And also for the Education Bureau, you sent a delegation to Finland. Do you have the corresponding figures from Finland for our reference? I talked about this 20% increase in the teachers' workload, and this is based on the following points. In the past, when we set for the university admission examination, we didn't have that much SBA, but today you have a lot of SBA and workload is huge. Secondly, in the past, for Form 6, Form 7 students, they had already passed the Hong Kong CEE threshold. In other words, they knew that they had to take care of themselves, so they were more independent. Nowadays, students didn't have to pass any public exams from primary to secondary. They are more dependent on others, and they did not have the experience of any public examination. You can imagine how much time teachers spend on coaching and coaching children. I think it is good for SEN students to receive integrated education at mainstream schools. It is good. But what about some students who have mental disorder? They are also allocated in a mainstream secondary school, and they have to sit public exams. Do we have sufficient resources? In other words, the case is more complicated. And yet we have got a larger class size. How come? In the past, we didn't have other learning experience. We didn't have applied learning. Teachers don't have to compile their students' profile for the purpose of university admission. So how come that more is on the plate, and yet the class size is not being reduced? Thank you. Next, Ms. To. Sorry. Mr. Chong. Mr. Chairman, lawmakers, senior members of the education sector, I speak on behalf of Di Dong. Just now, the experienced fellows in the educational sector have told us about the impact on the educational sector. We are a professional we are a group of professionals. We'd like to share with you our observations. No students want to see their school being killed. That's what teachers and headmasters are telling us. We did talk to certain students or former students who had the experience of having their schools killed. They told us that they didn't want their schools to be killed, and they also made one very important point. Identity is also a point in having a school building that you can call your mother's school. Now, for you to go to another school, it will bring with it adaptation problems. And if a school is faced with the threat of being closed, it means that teachers have a lower level of morale. Students don't get adequate attention. So killing schools is not actually a good policy. It is more than just a matter of resources. We have to bear in mind the needs of the students. We need to bear in mind the needs of the school. Secondly, I want to comment on the policy itself. According to the government's paper, for the S1 student population, there will be a drop, but then it is only going to be temporary. It is transitional. I hope the administration will come up with more figures. That is, if we assume that students at the age of 12 will go to secondary school, then if we look at the birth rate, then indeed in the year 2000, that is 12 years ago, we had a certain number of births. And then if you look at the student population or the birth rate for 2016-2013, yes, indeed, the birth rate was 8.1 in the year 2000 and 8.4 in the year 2005. So you do see a rebound to be expected. I hope the administration will come up with more figures. That is, what is the administration's estimate of the number of mainland children born to mainland mothers in Hong Kong, other than the birth rate? And in the past, we had 15% of babies born to mainland mothers. Now it has become 64%, though it was 34% in the year 2005. So that has to be taken into account as well. Next, Ms. To. Mr. Chairman, Secretary, fellow colleagues, lawmakers, I think we all know that schools are places to acquire knowledge and to grow as human beings. Now, for the drop in the student population, I think it is a common difficulty, a common challenge for everybody. It is also an opportunity for us to explore the feasibility of small class teaching or medium class teaching so as to improve the quality of education. We can avoid having mismatches in students and banding. We used to divide students into 3 bands. Band 1, Band 2, and Band 3. Schools can tailor-make curriculum and school activities in the light of the student abilities so that their potentials can be realized. With the drop in student population, teaching in accordance with students' ability will be affected. Band 1, Band 2 schools are popular with parents. I firmly believe that despite the drop in student population, in terms of enrollment, Band 1, Band 2 schools don't have a problem. On the other hand, for Band 3 schools, they are going to be much affected. Fewer classes, school closures cannot be avoided. Now we have fewer student population, fewer students, and yet we still have Band 3 schools. We still have Band 2 schools, and I'm afraid that Band 3 students will be wrongly sent to Band 2 schools, and again Band 2 students will be wrongly allocated to Band 1 schools. So there will be a mismatch in terms of the banding, and it means that we don't have students being allocated to schools in accordance with their abilities. It means that there's a greater degree of variation among the student ability. So schools cannot teach effectively, and students cannot learn effectively. They don't get the attention they need. Reducing the number of students in a class will be an effective response. We have the education reform with the NSS. We've got more school-based assessment. By having small classes, we can have better school-based assessment. Research and experience show that for SCT, it means that students of a lower level of ability, they can benefit. And in fact, it is not confined to Band 3 schools. It is applicable to Band 1, Band 2 schools as well. And student counseling can be more easily carried out. With small classes, school principals, teachers have to counsel students more today, so small class teaching will be the answer. I hope we can grasp this opportunity. On the 22nd of November, that would be the deadline for SSPA. So please have early discussion so that we can have a discussion about SCT or medium class teaching so as to guarantee better quality for our future generation. Thank you. Ms. Wong, I'm glad to be here to speak. This is not the first time that we have to face with a drop in student population. It started with primary schools, now it has been extended to secondary schools. We used to have a primary school and a secondary school next door. Well, the school building has its name changed 4 or 5 times. It's like hospice care for schools. I think it is a matter of a planning mistake on the part of the Education Bureau, and yet students, teachers, and schools and parents are made to bear the responsibility and to suffer from the consequences. The government thinks that we can resolve the problem easily, but in fact, the Bureau thinks that some schools are not of good quality, some schools are not popular with parents, and they think that such schools should bear the brunt. But I don't think so. Now, if you care to look at it from the educational perspective, then you know that students of different abilities should be given different degrees of care. If we adopt the philosophy of the Bureau, then teachers who are dedicated to the task of teaching low achievers, they will be most affected. And in turn, midstream schools will also be affected. There will be mismatch between student ability and banding. Teachers cannot cope with it even if they have got 24, 48 hours a day. Now, you think that you have got 51 students and the school can continue to operate. But I don't think so. Students are in a developmental stage. There's a lot more than teaching. you can imagine that if you've only got 20, 30 students in a year, for they to move up to the senior secondary years, how can we groom them to become student leaders? What about inter-class competitions? It means that we've got a dozen against a dozen students. Now, schools are not factories. We are not working on a piecemeal basis. We have got human beings leading and teaching human beings. So I hope that we can impart not just knowledge. We hope we can help them to learn leadership skills. They can learn how to become partners and how to cooperate with others. And then we can groom the future CE and future lawmakers. Other than the 3-2-1 proposal, we're willing to adopt a 1-1-1 proposal. Now for the Bureau, I think we should adjust downwards the class size in accordance with the drop in student population. Thank you. Next, Mr. Kam. I speak on behalf of the Branch Schools Council. There are 22 schools in our council. We won't have any under-enrollment problems, but then our basic position is that we support the reduction in the number of students to be allocated to each class as proposed. I think in this way we can continue to improve the quality of education. Yes, many people have said that for the branch schools, they have a lot of resources. In fact, when we carry out small class teaching, we have been using resources from elsewhere. But other schools can only count on the government resources to improve their quality. For the Branch Schools Council, we support that there should be a corresponding reduction in the number of students allocated to each class in accordance with drop in student population so as to achieve improvement in quality. At the same time, I want to say that the Alliance agrees that we can be flexible. This is particularly so for schools with through train primary schools, or they have a feeder school. So the Alliance is of the view that for such schools, they're running on the feeder system or the through train system, they should be given the option to either maintain the status quo or go along with other schools to reduce the class size. That is, either they have the current class size of 34. We very much hope that the Bureau can honor what Mr. Michael Shin has said and carry on with the practice of Mr. Michael Shin. That is, we always keep up the dialogue to resolve the problem jointly, instead of putting up advertisements separately in the press and to be on opposing sides in this chamber. We are still hopeful. We hope this can be done.
Next, Mr. Chairman, members, fellow educators, our school is not prepared to speak today. Next, Mr. Wong. Sorry, speaker's not coming through. Two members have already visited our school, and I'd like to emphasize that during classes in our schools, we have PowerPoint, we have interactive activities. It's not as boring as this one. And I'd like to say this to you, Secretary. In your paper, you said that in 2008-09, because of a reduction by some 5,000 students, only 34 classes have been cut. But in fact, you should be aware of the risk of being cheated by your subordinate. In 2008-09, I was the vice principal, and that was a hard time for us. During summer, I spent most of summer in the mainland because I had to enroll students there. So the population decrease at that time already caused a hard time for students. The teachers had to distribute leaflets in the streets and do promotional work, well, just to save the school. And you can say that parents have the right to choose, and the schools could be killed. But let's remember that there are schools that are disadvantaged. Say, for example, some teachers sat together with students in DSE exams, and they got good results. Well, and there were also media reports about that, but parents didn't know about that. So the Bureau should not just talk about the parents' choice. You should educate parents in making choices. Now, I think that this problem can be resolved with money. So if we have more money, we can implement the 3-2-1 proposal, and the number of students allocated to each S1 class can be reduced gradually. And for school principals here today, we're just here to express our views. We hope that the Secretary and members can be more careful about this. Why is it that the Education Bureau is not heeding to the sector's views? I really want to urge members to ask this question on our behalf. Mr. Ng, Secretary, I also hope that you have the wisdom to resolve this problem. Next, Mr. Hui. Chairman, honourable members, I am the 70th deputation to speak. I thank the education sectors. I believe in education. I worked in several schools. I was also the school principal of two schools, one being Band 1 and the other being Band 3. So I had real experience, an extensive experience in this regard. Now, I'm seated here today. I'm closest to Secretary, Mr. Ng, but I think that there is great distance between us. I think he's only focused on administration rather than education itself. He says that under-enrollment is just a temporary and transitional measure, and by 2016-17, things will go back to normal. But this is just the background, and I'd like to share my personal experience with you. I became a school principal first in 2004. That was a difficult school with a heavy workload. Education reform had started. About 10 years later, I became school principal of another school, and that was a Band 1 school. However, I found it very difficult because after 10 years of education reform, a lot of workload had increased. My wife divorced me because of that. She said that why is it that as a principal you are working so hard compared to other school principals? Well, there is a so-called long-term fatigue. As school principals, we have to take care of ALA students and also send students with special educational needs. And it's a problem for us because we don't know when an SEN student will be allocated to our school, and the only way out is to reduce the number of students allocated to S1 classes in order to improve the quality. And when do we see this opportunity? Is right now. We need to grasp this opportunity to improve the quality of our education. It's been said that 5 schools will be closed, but there are many schools waiting to be so-called killed. Government-built schools. We don't. How will the government be so cold to kill schools? Thank you. Next, Ms. Leung. Chairman, members, good afternoon. I speak on behalf of the Joint Council of the PTAs of the Sha Tin District. Last night we had a joint meeting and we discussed this topic, and the parent representatives from primary and secondary schools attended the meeting. Having consulted their views, we unanimously agreed to support the 321 proposal put forward by the sector on several grounds. First of all, it can improve the quality of education and provide a better environment for our students. Number two, it can help students help low achievers. Well, some parents said that although the school had a lower banding, but in their minds, because of the good care they provide for students, this is a good band school. And we should not affect the morale of the teaching staff. Almost all school principals in the secondaries of Hong Kong support this proposal. We should believe in them because they are the professionals. They know how to teach a student. They know what is in the best interest of students. Some parents think that as far as education is concerned, vision is needed. We are grooming our next generation to become the future pillars of our society. Some parents complain to me that teachers cannot focus on teaching because after class, the teachers have to rush to shopping arcades to attend booths to promote their schools. The Bureau says that the parents oppose the reduction in the number of students allocated to S1 classes because it would affect their opportunities in entering schools of their choice. But you should be reassured because our parents are also understanding. They understand that without reduction in the number of students, the impact on their students would be even greater. They also show concern not only about schools but about the whole system as well. Thank you. Next, Mr. Lau Chi-yun. Chairman, Secretary, members, fellow educators, good afternoon. Well, our school is situated in the North District, which is a remote and poor area, but we have a certain degree of reputation. Our school was established 30 years ago, and under the new NSS, over 90% of our students were successfully enrolled in universities. So, in a district where we see poverty and low socioeconomic status, this is something that I feel proud of. I believe that through education we can change the destiny of the disadvantaged so that they can be lifted out of poverty. Our school is very popular among students. We do not have any risk of being killed. However, for justice sake, in 2011, we wanted to help maintain the equilibrium of secondary schools, and then we took part in the voluntary optimization of class structure scheme. This year, I have to come out again. In order to fine-tune the secondary education in Hong Kong, I urge that the number of students be reduced to 30 per class immediately. Should there be a rebound in population in the future, we should look at the demands of different districts and adjust the number of students or number of classes in those districts. This is my request. With the continuous decline in student population, this is the best opportunity for us to fine-tune our education system. Now, at present, under the NSS, the number of students per class is 36 to 40. So how can teachers be given sufficient time to look after their students? So members and secretary, please do some soul searching. members and government officials who are able to afford huge high school fees send their children to international schools or overseas schools in overseas where small class teaching is implemented. However, the government officials do not pay heed to our request. I also ask for statistics about Finland. Last deputation, Mr. WONG Sheung-Kam, Chairman. Chairman, members, I represent Hong Kong Professional Teachers Union. I'm also a teacher. In terms of the philosophy and also the quality of education, I think the Secretary should be accountable. Small class teaching should be implemented in the face of declining student population in order to improve our quality of education. The Education Bureau has quoted figures from other countries. However, for these countries, they have already formulated policies on small class teaching. Now, the figures they've quoted is that 5 schools will be killed. Well, I teach mathematics. Can I say that because of the complicated calculus formula, I should write the answer on the board and let you interpret the formula yourself? Well, say for a health government official, we should formulate a comprehensive healthcare policy because of the epidemic. Well, is it really already very lenient for government to reduce class size from 30 to 18 per 2 class to 13 per class? And then in drips and drabs, the government proposes the early retirement scheme, and as said by the other deputations, the purpose of the scheme is to encourage our talented teachers to leave their professions. Has there been any planning as far as training for teachers is concerned? What we see is that after SEN students are allocated to schools, experienced teachers are invited to or encouraged to leave, whereas resources are allocated to new teachers to help these students. And also, are there any 3-year development plan? Say if a school can have 26 students at one level, what about the remaining students? How can they find another school? No idea. Why is it that no education planning why isn't there any education planning? Thank you, deputations, for attending and expressing your views. I'd like to invite the administration to respond to the deputations. All right, thank you for your valuable views. I'd like to reiterate that our goal is the same. We talked much about saving schools, and we are constantly looking at different proposals of keeping schools and keeping teaching posts. And I'd like to thank you for all the valuable views, and it's time for us to put our heads together and discuss the second part of the proposal. Now, I'd like to clarify that the purpose of the ERS, the Early Retirement Scheme, is not to ask experienced teachers to resign. I'm from Human Resources sector. We understand that for professionals with experience, they should not be asked to leave. But we also heard requests from some of the teachers, so we've put forward this proposal for as one of the options. and some of the deputations also offered this view. There should be a platform for negotiation, and I hope that I could see more discussion about stabilization of the teaching force and teaching posts. Now we agree that for time's sake there won't be any question and answer session, and I'd like to ask members. We have finished the second session, but they're subject to members and secretaries' views. I'd like to extend the meeting by 15 minutes so that we can have a Q&A session. But we need to be very brief in order to allow every member to ask questions. Well, let's extend the meeting by 15 minutes. First, I'll see how many members would like to speak, and then I will consider the time. 8 members. 8 members would like to speak. 3 minutes together, 24 minutes. So 3 minutes for question as well as answer, so that the meeting will be extended by 24 minutes. First, Dr. Fernando Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. First of all, I'd like to thank the education sector and all their representatives, some 200 school principals, for coming here. It's like the Ben-Hur, it's unprecedented. We have made history, and I'm happy to see that you're all united. And it also represents the sad situation of the education sector. School principals deserve our respect, but what are said today here is really upsetting and sad. What has made our 200 school principals to come and express their views in this council? The Secretary for Education has really done something. He has caused school principals who should be maintaining order and discipline and dignity of schools to travel all the way here to tell us about the problems with school closures. We have been advocating for small class teaching for many years. The government has refused, and the government is talking about saving teaching posts, saving schools, but he's got it all wrong. We should save education, not schools, not teachers. These are also called side effects. What is the most important thing is to have adequate resources and suitable environment for our teachers to teach their students properly. Why is it that the Education Bureau has refused to budge? He said that negotiation and discussion is possible, but if so, school principals wouldn't have had come to give their speeches in front of the media today. 3 minutes.
Secretary, you said you would talk, but they already have proposals. They have made their case. Do you accept the proposal from the education sector, that coming from over 200 principals, a 3-to-1 proposal? This is only an interim measure. You're given 15 seconds to answer. This is a platform to hear more views. We have never said that we will reject other proposals. This is a time for exchange. Thank you. Let me read out the names for you to get prepared. Sid Ho, Kenneth Chan, Starry Lee, Claudio Mo, Len Yu Chung, Helena Wong, Ma Feng Kwok, and the Deputy Chairman. Anyone else? No? Miss Sid Ho. I thank principals, but I only have 2 to 3 minutes, so I'm going to skip the pleasantries. I would like to raise 2 questions. The secretary may not be able to answer right now. I would like him to jot them down to answer me, for him to answer me tomorrow. Well, when Mrs. Fanny Law was the permanent secretary, she advocated using a benchmark examination to eliminate students, and she also advocates use by tearing the fabric, by dividing parents and schools. We did not like it, and it was used about a decade ago. Why do you revive it? And instead of accepting their views and talking to them, you engage in a media war. You put up an advertisement of a whole page. What good is it to the education sector? 2, how do you tackle the succession problem? And this morning, you have heard from a lot of principals that a lot of quality experienced teachers will leave, and when there is an increase in student population, there will be succession problem. How do you tackle that? And what about the impact on psychological impact on students who are waiting for their schools to close? That happened when they're in primary school. Has the administration done any assessment? 3, for band 3 schools. Well, when students enter, they may not be performing very well academically, and when they leave, they might have not improved a lot, but they have improved as a person because they have learned a lot in life. So there is a chance that they will be squeezed out. How do you help them? Number 4, well, would you give a chance for teachers to have professional development to take care of special needs students? At the moment, there are only 30 hours, which is not enough. And this morning, there was also mention about compiling teaching materials and reference materials. This is another burden on teachers. Why don't you give an opportunity for teachers to engage in professional development? And also, have they not? Well, has the permanent secretary why didn't the permanent secretary to come out? Because the permanent secretary was the person who did not say anything about the mistake of school closure. Will the permanent secretary come to us to speak tomorrow? Would you let Helena Wong to speak first, Mr. Chan? Yes. I thank Mr. Chen for letting me speak first. I thank principals for coming out to speak to us about your frontline experience. Of course, the Democratic Party support the implementation of small class teaching. And after I graduated, I was a teacher for a couple of years. That wasn't difficult, and yet that was a time without SPA, without education reform or liberal studies. You mentioned about the situation in junior and senior high schools. I would like to get some answers from the Secretary. Hong Kong has the condition to do better. Do we have the condition to do better? Do we have the condition to implement small class teaching? Are there any difficulties in its implementation? It was mentioned that Asian reference figures were used. Why? Why don't we use the example of US and UK in terms of teacher-student proportion as our reference point? And there are deputations mentioning about the difficulties encountered by newly recruited teachers. For those who've just left teaching school, it's difficult for them to find jobs and at the same time you ask experienced teachers to leave. So what do you suppose will happen? Are you trying to close teaching schools as well? What questions am I supposed to answer? Those from Helena Wong. Small class teaching is a part of the pedagogy, an important element of pedagogy. On a number of occasions I have mentioned, and I have also had a discussion with the Deputy Chair. I think it is an important issue. And it can't be dealt with through administrative measures in just a few months. You mentioned about information from US and UK. In fact, I have liaised with some overseas professors, those from the US. And if we have time, I will share the information with you. it's not the case that Hong Kong has not the condition to implement small class teaching. But if we, well, after drawing experience from implementation of small class teaching, we have to do it comprehensively, not by administrative means. So we first have to do some exchange, some studies. I've also identified some other options, and I am looking at how to introduce them to you in a systematic way. And I'm still reading literature about small class teaching. This is not something that I will put aside, but this is not under this issue. Next, Mr. Kenneth Chan. First, I agree with Sid Ho. Well, I ask, not hope, I ask Mrs. Tse to come to speak to us, the permanent secretary, because the secretary mentioned about meetings several days ago. Mrs. Tse said something, but what was said? What was her stance? What issues are being dealt with? Well, we need to find some answers. Otherwise, it will be meaningless to have a discussion because the person that is most important is missing. And now we have the secretary who's being used as a shield. So I find it puzzling why that is not the approach taken by an accountable government. Well, the CE kept saying that we'll be pragmatical, but we're not pursuing a pragmatical course. And the secretary mentioned about academia and studies. It's not pragmatic at all. A couple of weeks ago, I asked you about this issue. You said theoretically, well, for primary school, small class teaching is maybe useful, but not as useful in secondary school. You asked You asked a rhetorical question, but now we have a discussion. Principals are telling you that given Hong Kong's situation, there is an urgency and a need for small class teaching in secondary schools to help teachers to do their core business, which is to teach. But you instead resort to very vague, very abstract ideas. I'm sorry. Well, I wasn't too polite. I stood up and talked to you after the first session. In footnote 2 in your documentation, in your document, you mentioned about Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. Well, do schools in Singapore and Japan have to go out to hand out leaflets and to engage in a number of other activities to appeal to get students and to also to fill in information about their outside experience that will take 3 nights? These are very important issues, and Secretary, you can't dodge this. The last question, Secretary. Today you said you are here to listen to views. When will you learn from your predecessor, Mr. Michael Soon, to sit down with him and to talk to him? Secretary, when will you learn? Previously, I mentioned to individual deputations that these few weeks are very important. In mid-November, the panel meeting will be conducted, and the 12th of November is also the 22nd of November is also an important date. We're doing a lot. The principal associations and school councils will also have meetings with me. Next, Ms. Dari Lee. I very much appreciate principals, deputations to come to the LegCo to speak to us. In the last term, I had the pleasure to be the chairman of the education panel for a number of years, but then there was no chance for principals to come to speak. This is a very important issue because this will have a major impact on the future development of the sector. I'm sorry there was a clash because there is another meeting talking about the special stamp duty. So I was going in and out of this room. But it's very important. I try my best to stay here to listen to you. Secretary, please deal with this very carefully. You will still remember about national education. I hope you will actually learn a lesson. Deputation said that it seems that the door has been half closed and you're not engaging them. I hope you will actually reach out to talk to deputations and stakeholders and to have abundant and sufficient communications with them. And I fully identify with the points you've raised. preservation of schools and preservation of teaching posts, and to find ways to increase, to enhance the quality, and to give more time for teachers to further their studies and to engage in professional development. I've heard about this 321 proposal, and I've had discussions with stakeholders and teachers. Perhaps, Secretary, you will give us some answers. They ask for an upward-downward adjustment mechanism to deal with the temporary drop in student population. We all agree that this is only transitional. Well, how will you make sure that there won't be 100 schools that will close, as mentioned by principals? And the deputation said that apart from reducing student numbers, would you consider reducing the number of teaching sessions of teachers? A lot of language teachers told me that they have been worked into the ground because apart from teaching, they have to take students out for extracurricular activities on top of preparation. Will you consider reducing the number of teaching sessions? And if there is indeed surplus teachers, how will you handle it? How can you ensure that in the meantime, experienced and quality teachers will stay in the sector and they will not be affected because of this short transitional period? First, can you tell us, will there be the occasion when 100 schools will be closed? I don't want to see that. And for the other questions, could you supply me with the answers tomorrow or after the meeting? 3 seconds. We don't have policies to kill schools. In the past 45 days, I've spoken to many different bodies that I don't want to see the words killing schools. Even when it was mentioned that when 5 schools will be closed, and we're talking about less than 26 students in 2 classes. And we cannot give an undertaking without any basis. But I can tell you very clearly that we have heard very clear the information sent in relation to primary school closures, and we have no interest in closing schools. Well, if you want more information from the Secretary, then you have to shorten your questions. Next, Ms. Claudia Mo. First of all, I have to express my deep, heartfelt regret, because as principal said, you have not sat down to talk to them properly. Instead, you engage in a media war. You use public funds to put out advertisements saying that it is a misuse of public funding and it's an across-the-board approach. And this is not the appropriate course. And this is completely unacceptable to the education sector. Secretary, will you seriously consider reducing the teaching sessions of teachers and to seriously consider what Ms. Ho said? That is, even for teachers who have accepted the early retirement under the scheme, they can also work to compile textbooks. And in relation to data of US and UK, not just Finland, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada, UK, US, please share with us the information. Lastly, I'm very concerned, as I've heard from principal, that parents should be educated. I am a little bit concerned that this may generate an adverse sentiment from parents, because it's, after all, their children. Well, I don't want it to be the case that the Education Bureau is so infuriating that you have to say those words. Well, we don't want to see confrontation between schools and parents, because in the end, children will suffer. Secretary. Thank you. I will seriously consider your questions. The advertisement we put out today is in relation to what was expressed by parents and schools in the past few weeks, because they said mixed and confusing messages have been sent them. That's why we put this advertisement to clarify, to give them a clear message. And in the past 6 weeks, I have seen some of the bodies and deputations. And I've said that in the coming 2 weeks, we will meet with a lot of school councils. In the past 2 months, I have spent a lot of time meeting with them. But what I've heard was quite diversified and not focused enough. Next, Mr. Lang Yu-chung. I thank deputations and principals for attending. Just now, Dr. Fernando Zhang said that it is like a scene in Ben-Hur. Well, if we change today to be Teachers' Day and we ask teachers to come as well, I'm sure there will be more than this number. Maybe 2,000 and 20,000 people from the education sector will attend, because this is an issue that is close to all your hearts. We're not talking about today or this week. This is a serious problem that has been plaguing the sector for a number of years. I declare that I'm still a teacher. I've been teaching for over 30 years. I'm a frontline teacher. So when you talk about experience on the front line, I can fully identify with it because I have personal experience. In the education sector, the biggest problem is to deal with SEN students. And and in particular the difference in students' ability. We don't know what to do, so we very much look forward to small class teaching. And some of the views expressed is something I'm afraid I cannot identify with. You said seize the opportunity. I'm afraid I cannot identify with that. We need small class education. Not just because there is a decrease in student population. We need small class education because it will improve education quality. And small class education is something that is owed by the administration for a long time. Ever since the 90s, I was in the council. Nearly every year we talk about small class education, but the administration has been saying, just like what the secretary said, that small class teaching may not be successful. And that was what they maintained for over 10 years. And yet they have not done any studies to substantiate that. And today the secretary is still saying that they are doing a literary research. They have not done any test to prove whether it is successful or otherwise. And I have heard from Mrs. Fanny Law why they can't do small class teaching, why there is school closure, because they want the survival of the fittest. Well, so, Secretary, is it the case that it is the survival of the fittest? Otherwise, well, what do you mean by implementing small class teaching comprehensively and not by administrative means? I said that after the implementation of small class teaching in primary school, they've been proved to be good. And there are some analysis, and it was covered by the press, that the younger students are, the more effective small class teaching is. And that's one point. And small class teaching is a part of pedagogy. And I'll seriously deal with that. And I think that, well, we have drawn experience from primary school, and then we will consider extending it to secondary school. We will also study different pedagogies, mixed teaching, integrated education, and we will consider.
The last one, and our Deputy Chairman. I am grateful to have so many old faces here. And I've never expected to meet you within such a setting. I think we are all dedicated. We all want to seek a good solution. Now, I think we're faced with crisis on 3 fronts. First of all, planning on the part of the government. The Secretary has said that in the coming weeks, we are going to meet with a deadline. I don't think we should be rushed in such a way. It is about long-term planning. In fact, we should have been told about the outcome a long time ago. And then for the questions asked by the education sector, in particular the school principals, you should give answers to the questions so that you attend to the urgent business. And then the second crisis lies with the consultation process. I think we haven't had much effective consultation. Otherwise, principals don't have to come to this hearing. I think the Education Bureau should be frank and please give us the information. Please also listen to us. And I think we need to have room to maneuver. Usually the Bureau would wait for the last minute to tell us, to give us information. This is not good consultation. There must be some effective dialogue between the stakeholders, among stakeholders. And then we're talking about changes in the educational environment. Just now, Mr. Leung Yu-chung, a school teacher, talked about elimination, survival of the fittest. Well, I don't think you can rely on this mechanism to achieve elimination of the weakest. I think the Secretary should understand the facts and you should understand our viewpoints and come back with a reply. We all want to seek solutions. We don't want to create trouble for you. If you can be more positive, I think we can all find a good solution. I will appeal to the school principals to start talking to the teachers. I think we are all aware of the problem, but sometimes the teachers may not be aware of the seriousness of the problem. They are entitled to understand the matter. You should also start the discussion within your school setting so you know how to cope with it. It is very important. All the teachers in the coming days should be given a chance to discuss the matter with the school authority at school meetings. But ultimately, it will be the Bureau that should be thinking hard to find a solution. Members, now, in fact, we have already overrun by half an hour. It is already 1 o'clock. Can I exercise some discretion that is extended by another 5 minutes so that the Secretary can give a brief reply to the Deputy Chairman's point? And then Mr. Cheung would like to say something. But I think we can at most allow 2 deputations to speak and 1 minute each. So I'll extend the meeting by another 5 minutes. Members should refrain from asking further questions. So Secretary for Education, could you briefly answer the Deputy Chair's question? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Deputy Chair, for your question. I agree. I favor that for education planning, we need to do it better, not just the demographic figures, but also the relevant analysis. Well, in fact, on my part, I hope that we should enhance our work in research. We want to be more scientific, we should be more systematic instead of adopting a piecemeal approach. And then for consultation, I agree that we need to enhance it. Well, in fact, for this particular issue, myself and my colleagues have been holding working group meetings with various school principals. But I agree with you that in future we need to be more focused and thirdly, more positive. Certainly, I will be very positive in handling this matter. 2 minutes. 1 minute for Mr. Zhou Wai and then another minute for Mr. Lam. Secretary, I thank you for giving this reply. But then, in the past 2 weeks, we have already been very focused in our discussion. We've only got one humble and tolerant request. That is, we hope that the Bureau can respond to our 3-2-1 proposal. However, I had a few meetings with you, and you had also met with the proposal. You have been meeting with the Alliance. Mr. Yip got his chance, but we haven't got our turn to get your reply, a sincere reply from you. Mr. Leung said that we shouldn't be using the phrase making use of the opportunity or grabbing the opportunity. Chinese are very accommodating. We are very tolerant. So we try to take this opportunity when there is a drop in student population to air our wish to put forward such a humble request. So please be sympathetic towards our case. Mr. Lam, I would like to tell the Education Bureau clearly, be frank and please carry out some substantive work. We have had the exchange sessions with some parents. Some parents are telling us that what we have been telling them are different from what government officials have been saying. So please be concrete and specific in your work. And also, please be frank in your statements, and then you can set yourselves as examples for the future generation. I think we are very focused. We have one main request and a supplementary request. We have already tabled a paper for the Bureau. So we have all been very, very focused and specific in our request. So in relation to the reduction of number of classes, flexible. And we have got consensus on other matters. Among the districts, we have a SSPA working group to coordinate our work. So please take our request seriously. Today, we haven't got time for the Secretary to give another answer again. So grateful to all of you who have come to the meeting. If you have got further views, please do so in writing. And to facilitate our collation of information, if your speech can be left behind on the table, we'll welcome that. And then for tomorrow's meeting, it will start at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Thank you.